Hello everyone, welcome back to another Doctor Who collection update where I'll be showing you all the lovely bits of Doctor Who merchandise I picked up in November and December. So that means this is the Christmas collection update and this is the last one for 2024. I hope you all had a wonderful Christmas and got some lovely Doctor Who goodies underneath your Christmas tree. This collection update, we've got a nice variety of merchandise. We've got convention pickups, we've got graphic novels, we've got books, and of course, Big Finish and figures. So yeah, nice selection of merch to get through within this collection update. So if you're new around here, then please do consider hitting the subscribe button because there's plenty of Doctor Who related content on the channel and coming up in the near future. So without further ado, let's dive into the merch. Kicking off this collection update, I thought I'd kickstart it with a bang because it's the last one of the year, so let's do something big to open this one up. So I booked a sort of trip to London in April to see something which you'll see in a minute, which does have a Doctor Who connection. And it coincided with London Film and Comic Con Winter. And they had Ncuti Gatwa, Millie Gibson, Colin Baker, Bonnie Langford, there, which was great. So I thought, you know, since being there for the weekend anyway, let's go to that. And my goodness, it's probably one of the worst, if not the worst, sort of convention experiences I've had. I think Showmasters overbooked Ncuti Gatwa because Ncuti had sort of a limited time there. It was announced quite late on, and I was one of the lucky few on the Saturday to meet Ncuti Gatwa, which was very much a blink and you'll miss it experience. It's just like, wow, it's just real sort of a blur just to get to that point, because literally he had 2 minutes before he had to leave before I managed to get this photo. So I was like one of the last few of the day to meet him, and obviously Showmasters doesn't have a refund policy, so yeah, it was an absolute nightmare. But I'm so chuffed I managed to meet Ncuti, and he was a gentleman with the time I met him. But yeah, great to meet the current Doctor. I think that was a real sort of treat. But it didn't stop there. I did meet Ruby Sunday, Millie Gibson. That was really lovely. She was so sweet. But yeah, really nice to have met the current sort of TARDIS team, or the latest TARDIS team, despite it being a bit of a disaster. But the main reason I went to London was to see David Tennant in Macbeth, and luckily managed to stage door and get the programme signed, and that was a phenomenal production. Really great, very sort of immersive, you know, wearing headphones, so it felt very quite intimate. So when the sort of characters are whispering, it really sort of added to sort of the descent of, you know, Macbeth's madness, which was really great. One of the best pieces of theatre I've seen, and it was just a nice sort of icing on the cake to meet David Tennant at the end of the day. So yeah, meeting some doctors in London. Next up we have figures. Yes, so we've got the retail versions of the 15th Doctor and Ruby Sunday, which I think the 15th Doctor is probably my favourite over the Vortex edition one. I think I prefer the sort of costume of the Space Babies. I think it's more of a nice contrast. And then we have Ruby, which I'm going to be honest, I think I prefer the Church on Ruby Road Ruby. Still a nice little figure, a nice approximation of the Dot and Bubble costume. And then we have the most recent B&M wave, the Friends and Foe set, and the Parting of the Way set, which, you know, really great little wave. Very sort of odd wave in terms of the figure pack, but, you know, welcome additions. And what a fine year for character options in terms of figures this year. It's been a real great year, sort of starting a whole new line with the Vortex figures, showing that character can really up their game sort of to, you know, the Hasbro standards, and show that character options is still capable of producing amazing figures. So yeah, I think character options future's looking incredibly bright in terms of a Doctor Who figure, so I'm excited to see what 2025 brings for the character options figures. And of course I've reviewed all of these figures, so if you want to know my full thoughts on these sets, then check out the link down below to the figure review playlist. From figures to graphic novels, so I picked up 3 graphic novels, which have been one of my favourite things to get this year actually, and I've been on the mission to try and complete the Panini graphic novel collection. I'm just one away now, which is incredibly exciting. So I picked up the most recent one, Monstrous Beauty, which features the 9th Doctor Time Lord Victorious one, and of course it has the wonderful Peter Cushing little comic, which is lovely, and the last sort of 13th Doctor comic strip, and, you know, it's all very lovely to have. And obviously if we get to the main event, which is the Time Lord Victorious one, which, you know, if you want to get in the mood for old sort of Nosferatu with sort of vampires. You can, so yeah, great to have that collected in this issue. But it does have this wonderful little Third Doctor comic, which is, great. Got to get my Third Doctor goodness there, which is lovely. And we do have a First Doctor Stephen and Vicky comic in there, and I think we've got a Seventh Doctor Mel and Auton story. There you go, you can see the Auton there, so that's really, really neat. And of course we do have a Fourth Doctor comic there, so that's a really nice little graphic novel collection collecting some various comics there, so yeah, really lovely. From the last 13th Doctor comic to her first, this is the Mistress of Chaos, the first sort of issue of the 13th Doctor comic strips. And yeah, this is brilliant. I think that these comics really get Jodie's Doctor, and I think they're full of some wonderful creative ideas, like Dog Bolter's sister being in it. It's just really lovely. I think the expanded media really, does the 13th Doctor brilliantly. So yeah, this is a great run of comics, and I really, really like it. So yeah, really nice to have Jodie's first issues of comics there, which are, great, lovely, striking cover as well. And the final graphic novel I'm going to show, which is the final 12th Doctor comic graphic novel collection, which is The Clockwise War, which you can see the young John Hurt there. This is one I've been wanting for such a long time. This just sounded very exciting. It sort of links back to the 8th Doctor comics, which is lovely. Little cameo of the young War Doctor there, which is great, on the sort of battlefield, on the 12th Doctor's eyebrows there. It's brilliant, but it's not just a 12th Doctor graphic novel. We've got a wonderful sort of Cyberman sort of series of comics, which is really lovely, with sort of Silurians and Sea Devils. That's great, but one of my favourite things in this issue, or this collection, we've got a First Doctor and Ian comic there. We have a 4th Doctor and Sarah Menoptera story. How wild is that? 4th Doctor and Sarah on the Web Planet. But I think my favourite little comic strip I've read, and this is quite interesting actually, we've got a little goth opera sort of thing going on. Instead of Nyssa being taken over by vampires, we've got Tegan. So that's pretty interesting. But my favourite comic strip is the return of the Star Beast 2, where the Meep is on trial and has vengeance for the 4th Doctor. And that is a really lovely little comic strip, and that was just a lot of fun. So that is The Clockwise War. From graphic novels to books, so I've been on a quest to try and complete my Virgin Missing Adventure collection, and I've added another one to the collection, which is Downtime, which is very odd, isn't it? Because it's not really a Missing Adventure. It was sort of a sort of 90s spin-off, wasn't it, with the Great Intelligence and Victoria Waterfield and Sarah and the Brigadier. I've not heard too good things about this. I think this expands the original quite well, apparently. I've not watched Downtime. I know it's a bit sort of questionable, and it's interesting. In the middle of the book, we've got sort of these little behind-the-scenes images of when they were filming Downtime. So yeah, very odd, and obviously Kate Stewart. Yeah, it's very, very bizarre that this is sort of a Virgin Missing Adventure. I can see that this probably would have been like a Target novelisation, but I guess it was under the Virgin publishing line, really. Then we move on to some EDAs, because I've been really getting into those. So I picked up Camera Obscura, where we have the 8th Doctor having a showdown against sort of Sabaoth, the person who took the 8th Doctor's heart. And this has got a real great sort of twist within it, because the 8th Doctor dies in it. Spoiler, but obviously we know he doesn't. But yeah, this is one of those sort of big stories, and Lloyd Rose is one of the championed writers of the EDA, so I'm looking forward to getting around to reading that when I start reading the EDAs properly. And then we have a historical History 101 about sort of the Spanish Revolution. This is meant to be a really good sort of pure historical, so if you like Peterloo Massacre and the sort of the massacre and sort of the dark historicals, then I think you'll really enjoy this one, and I'm very excited to dive into that eventually. And then we have one of the rarer EDAs, which is one of the latter ones. This is sort of, I think, released sort of 2005, I think. It is Tomorrow Windows by Jonathan Morris. This was going to have like the surfboard logo, but they kept it consistent right until the end. And rather interestingly, this features the 9th Doctor. Yeah, and even the Schalke Doctor, I think, as well. So it's technically a multi-Doctor story, this. So yeah, very pleased to add that to the collection. And then we have another EDA, which is the Book of Still. Sounds like quite an interesting premise, that sort of time machine breakdown sort of thing going on. But yeah, sounds quite an interesting idea. Love the cover. I think that's a nice sort of simplistic cover there. So that looks very neat. And then breaking away from the EDAs just for a second, we have a PDA, which is The Murder Game, which is the second PDA, which is Second Doctor Ben and Polly. This is meant to be one of the best Doctor Who books, written by Steve Lyons. Interestingly, we've got a salamander on the cover, even though it's not. It is the debut of the Salacians, which went on to appear in Big Finish, like The Architects of History and The Salatian Gambit. This is meant to be a quintessential Second Doctor book. This is meant to be a great Base and the Siege story, so if you like your Second Doctor, this will be perfect for you. So I'm really looking forward to giving that a read. And then we move back to the EDAs, the last EDA I'm going to show, which is The Taking of Planet 5, which features the Fendahl. I like Image of the Fendahl, so I'm very excited to give this a read. Yeah, very interested to give this one a go, because it's one of those EDAs I've been interested in a long time. And the final book I'm going to show, which is the most recent series of books, and that is of course the 15th Doctor book, Eden Rebellion. I've started reading this, and I think it really gets the characterization of 15 and Ruby's dynamic very well, because they want to go on holiday, and of course things aren't as what they seem. So yeah, great to add this, because this is the final 15th Doctor book in the trilogy, and it's great to see these sort of new series novels continue, even though they're a little bit more thinner compared to the old sort of 250 page books. These are about 200 pages, so you can get through these books fairly quickly. So that is the books. On to the final section of a collection update, and that is of course Big Finish. So I'm going to kickstart with the Eternity Club 3 and 4. I've not listened to these yet, because I've been waiting for this sort of series to sort of conclude and then sort of marathon them. I've only done the first release, which I really enjoyed, so I'm looking forward to getting down to the mystery of the Eternity Club and seeing what it was all about. But yeah, I'll probably get around to listening to those soon. They're next on the listening pile once I've finished another release, which I'll talk about in a minute. We have November's 7th Doctor release for Doctor and Karnaki. This seems like a quintessential 7th Doctor box set, doesn't it? 7th Doctor, creepy houses, perfect. And I think there's some neat ideas, like the last story, and the house, the second story in this set, I think is brilliant. I think, by Georgia Cook, how can you make wallpaper scary? This story does. I think the problem with this is they all follow the same sort of cliche route, which kind of gets a little bit tiresome within. I think it's got some neat ideas, and I just wish it really stuck to the horror format a little bit better. And there will be a full review coming out soon, because me and Luke recorded it a while ago. I've just not got around to editing it, but yeah, we have reviewed it, and it was okay, it was alright. It was probably the best 7th Doctor release of the year. And then we move on to one of my favourite releases of the year, which is Deadly Strangers, the latest 8th Doctor box set. The Doctor and Puccini is a really lovely, relaxed story, really putting character at the centre of the box set, of the story. And I think that's what I really love about the 8th Doctor, Audacity and Charlie stuff, is just how relaxing these stories are, but they're just very chill, vibes are great, and they're just really lovely. And I think there's some beautiful moments between the Doctor and Puccini, how it links back to sort of Madame Butterfly, and that sort of being the sort of 8th Doctor's first moment in a way, sort of the cause of the 7th Doctor's death. And then we've got the Women's Days Off, which is an interesting story by Lisa McMullen, I believe. Yeah, and that's interesting. I think that when the sci-fi elements introduced, it sort of let itself down. I think it would have been quite an interesting, pure historical. And then we have The Gloaming, which features the Mara, which is a great addition to this set. And I think that this is one of the best of 2024, in my opinion. I think it's a really strong set, and another strong set of stories. The War Master, Future Phantoms, the last Scott Hancock War Master box set. This was an absolute delight. The War Master really suits sort of the dark academia setting. The Sitter is such an unnerving story by Lizzie Hopley. Yeah, this is just a great sort of one for your dark, wintry night listen. This is one to sort of listen to around midnight and, you know, scare yourself, because it's just a real great return to form for the War Master. It's one of my favourite releases of the year. I really do enjoy that set. Now on to the thing I'm listening to currently, which is Unknown Soldiers, part of the War Doctor Rises, and I think they've really mastered the Time War format with the War Doctors just sort of being, you know, one story across 3 hours, and you've got this really interesting bunch of sort of supporting characters. It is Doctor Who's Suicide Squad in a real way. You know, the War Doctor sort of gets tangled up in this sort of group, and it's just a lot of fun. It's a great story. I don't know if I prefer it to Morbius the Mighty. I'll have to finish this set to make a judgment, but I think the War Doctor has probably been the best Doctor in terms of Big Finish this year. I think Jonathan Carley's done amazing work, and his releases have been real standouts this year. And the last Big Finish I'm going to show is where it all started for the Doctor Who Big Finish, and that is the Sirens of Time Redux. This is the gold edition, I believe, or silver edition, I think, which was limited to, I think, 1,500, I believe. This is the re-edit of Sirens of Time. It's got an hour-long making of documentary, which is a lot of fun. And yeah, this is very much the Sirens of Time, but with the techniques of 2024 Big Finish, and I think that this is much more a satisfying narrative experience of the story. You get to see the true vision of this story, instead of being part 1 7th Doctor, part 2 5th Doctor, and then part 3 Colin. So it's more satisfying sort of having sort of the Doctor sort of story sort of interwoven throughout in this new edit. So yeah, great little new addition, and a nice slice of Big Finish history, really updated. So there we go, that is the December Christmas collection update. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I wish you a happy new year. And yes, thank you very much for watching this video. Please like and subscribe for plenty more Doctor related content coming up in the near future, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.